Welcome to this ORCID webinar on Extender workflow. My name is Natalie, and today I will walk you through an introduction of the workflow functionality. This webinar coincides with the release of new functionality in Extender and Information Manager, so we'll look at that first. And then the rest of the focus of the webinar is on workflow. What is workflow? How it fits into the rest of Extender. We'll go through some workflow concepts such as steps, actions, values, workflow console, screen icons, and we will go through a detailed demonstration of a workflow applied to approving AR credit limit changes. We will also look at a manually started workflow to set a customer on hold and a workflow to put all orders from retail customers on hold when they're inserted. And we will look at some other examples. We will have a close look at workflow templates and the key actions that are included in Extender Configurator. This is not a full training video, so watch this space for more detailed training videos on configuring Extender workflow. So what's new in Extender PU6? The big new functionality is the workflow functionality, which is added to Extender Configurator, Customizer, and Developer, and we will look at that in a little bit more detail. We've also added the ability to password protect Python's custom scripts in Extender, so you'll be able to add a password to make the script non-viewable, or to just add a password so that the script cannot be changed without knowing the password. New functionality added to ORCID Information Manager, ORCID User, and Tray Configuration, so that you can have icons to view Extender log and to view, start, and progress workflow on Sage 300 screens. So why are we introducing Extender workflow? Well, with Extender becoming a platform of choice to tailor Sage 300, we've had many requests for custom scripts to design workflow. And many of those scripts that we've designed in the last couple of years have had constant components like sending emails, putting records on hold, not posting transactions. So we've incorporated some of this key functionality into the workflow, including the ability to log the history behind those approval processes. So that will give partners and users more visibility on the custom processes and the key process flow decision points. Those key decision points are going to be visible in the workflow templates. So the workflow configuration will include some default actions, and then if required you can use custom scripts, still using Python. There are Extender scripts for specific pieces into the workflow. So for example, you can have a workflow to approve field changes such as an AR customer credit limit, inserting new records, GL account, or an order entry or purchase order, an approval for batch status changes. It can also be used to manage exceptions such as custom alerts through email or logging, requesting more information from a coworker. And all in it allows for more effective use of emails. You can also use it to link to other systems such as Microsoft Flow or SharePoint and develop your own custom actions. Workflow is not a completely new module. It fits into the existing Extender module. It will be available in all Extender editions. With Configurator, you will have access to all the default actions that we are releasing, and that's the focus of today's webinar. If you're using Customizer or Developer, you will be able to add your own custom actions to a workflow template. The workflow can be attached to any Sage 300 view, core module, or third-party developed in the SDK. You'll be able to add icons to the classic UI screens. And those icons will be able to be used to start a workflow or to progress a workflow to the next stage. So the key concepts that are used in workflow functionality is around steps of your business process. A step is a collection of actions. So the configurable actions such as sending an email, setting a value for use in the workflow, setting a field on a Sage 300 view, working out who is going to be the approver, prompting a user in the workflow for input that is going to be stored within the workflow. In practice, to use the workflow, once it's been configured in the template, you'll be using the workflow console to manage the approval requests and the tasks that are assigned to you or to a group that you're part of. You'll also be able to use icons on Sage 300 screens, and those icons are configured in Information Manager and are used by users who are flagged as ORCID users. And custom actions we will briefly touch on, but it is not the focus of today's webinar. So what we're going to look at today is using a detailed example on an AR credit limit approval. So we will start that workflow when a credit limit is changed, logged in as a particular user, and then that will set another user to approve that credit limit. Logged in as that other user, we will use the workflow console and or the config screens, icons that we've configured on screens to progress the workflow to approve or reject it. And then we'll also be able to view the logs. To achieve that, we've got a configuration just at the top there where we start with a flowchart of the tasks that we want in that workflow. Do some general configuration like extender security groups, setting up some email templates, creating some groups of users who can approve early orders, purchase orders, AR customers, set up some workflow colors that are used on the workflow console. And then we focus on our workflow templates. So steps made up of various actions, steps that a workflow can progress to manually, and then values, variables that are used in the workflow. Then we attach this workflow to a Sage 300 view and or a Sage 300 screen so that icons are added to the screens. So this is our example flowchart, and our credit limit approval, where if the credit limit requested is less than $10,000, nothing happens. The user who's logged on, provided they've got rights in Sage 300, can update the credit limit. If it's between 10 and 50,000, any member of the AR accounts team can approve. If it's above 50,000, then only a manager can approve. In both of these cases, whether the approver is an accounts team user or a manager, the approval step and the reject steps are the same. On rejection, the credit limit is validated by the approver and the original user who submitted the request is informed. And the detail values at the time of approving are saved in the workflow history. So we'll look at the console and the screens on the icon, and then we'll look at the detailed workflow templates and configuration in Information Manager options. So now let's dive into Sage 300. Okay, so now I'm logged into Sage 300 as Dan, who has been asked by a customer to increase the credit limit. So I'm going to find customer, level 100, go here, and I want to change my credit limit to 30,000. Save that. So what it's doing in the background is starting the workflow, sending an email to users in the AR accounts team, not saving the new customer limit until it's approved. I've received an email notification here. So I also have a request for a change credit limit for Mr. Ronald Black. I'll enter it at the same time. And he is still about to place a new order, and he's asking for, that might take him to 100,000, to enter 100,000, which according to our business process means Anne should be the approver for that. So now I'm going to log in as Natalie, who's a user in the accounts team. And if I look at my console, I can see what's happened here. I've got tasks I've done in the past, they're in green, they've been completed, there's nothing waiting for me to do. And then there's the credit limit that's just been requested from Bargain Mart. So I can see it is in a wholesale customer group, the requested value is 30,000. I can, if I need to, I can drill down here to the customer activity or to the AR customer screen to get some more detail. I can click on the values tab to see what the original credit limit was. I could reassign it to another user, or I can reject it or approve. In this case, I'm going to approve the credit limit. So I'm prompted to confirm the limits. I could change it, make it bigger. And I'm going to enter a comment, review in 6 months. So now it's going to save that 30,000 for that customer. And it's going to mark that workflow as completed. It's also going to send an email notification to Dan, which we can look at in here. So go back to Sage 300 to my console, and I can drill into customer 1100. Go and see that my credit limit is now 30,000. And on the icons, I can look at the history. I am logging using extender logging functionality, changes to the credit limit, and I can now access this through an icon on the AR customer screen. So now, let's log in as Anne, who's the financial controller. And when Anne looks at her workflow console, just look at what's assigned to Anne, and she can see that there's a credit limit request from Mr. Ronald Black that's been entered by Dan for $100,000. Same as before, logged in as Natalie, I can drill down to the customer activity or the customer screen to view some detail. I can review the values, including the original credit limit, and reassign to another user, or approve or reject. I'm going to approve it, but I'm going to change the amount. So let's say I'm only going to approve it for 90,000. So that is going to send an email notification to Dan saying the credit limit has been approved for 90,000. It's also going to set the credit limit to 90,000. So now let's log in as admin and have a look at the configuration behind the example we've just looked at. The core of it is in this screen called Workflow Templates. Some of the other extender components are useful in configuring the workflow. Email templates. So we've got various templates that are used in the workflow here for when the credit limit is approved, when the credit limit is rejected, when the customer is put on hold for the other workflow, when the customer credit limit change requested is done. Then specifically for the workflow, we've got our user groups. So you may remember that in our example, we've got some group, AR approver group, so that people can approve the credit limit, and they've got two users, Natalie and Orchid A. So we create this user group made up of Sage 300 users who obviously should have the rights in Sage 300 to do what you expect them to do through the workflow. The workflow colors are configured and used on the workflow console. So you can say, depending on where you are in the workflow, show the row on the console in a different color. So let's look at our workflow template. For the scenario we're looking at, in this example, I can't start this workflow manually. So this workflow will only start automatically when the credit limit is changed, which you configure. Now I've got my key steps here, which are first, when the record is updated, I'm going to check, do I need to start the workflow or not? Next step is, if I need an approval, this record is going to wait for somebody to approve. So in this step, what I can do is either approve or reject. And what that does is basically adds those two step buttons to the workflow console or to the screen if you choose to configure it on the screen. Then when I approve, I have another series of actions, and when I reject, I have another series of actions at the bottom there. I've also done my own reassign action so that I can send an email to whoever requested that limit to say that it's been reassigned to somebody else. So let's look a bit more closely at that first check step. That step is made up of a series of actions which should match our business process in the flow. The first thing I do in this workflow is say that from that screen I want to be able to drill down to the customer screen. So I'm setting enabling drill down for the customer that's on the screen. Then I'm going to evaluate, which means looking at that field, amount credit limit, the one that the workflow is attached to, saying if it's greater than 10,000, go to step 30. And if it's less than 10,000, I'm going to go to 130. So let's close that loop quickly and check 130 means complete the workflow. So I don't need a workflow. I don't need an approval if it's less than 10,000. But if it's more than 10,000, the next thing I need to do is check whether it is more or less than 50,000, my next cutoff point. And then if it is more than 50,000, I go to action 60. And action 60 is assigning a user. A user who's a manager, in this case, Anne. And then choosing a color, which is red. If it's more than 10 and less than 50, the approver is going to be that user group that we've configured earlier, and the color is going to be yellow. And then in all cases, that workflow regroups into action 80, which is restore the old credit limit. So the original credit limit remains saved on that record. I'm setting the workflow status to on hold and sending an email. And then going to step wait. Approve step, it's a little bit simpler. So what I'm doing is setting some fields to gather some user input. So I want them to validate the credit limit that's requested or type in another amount and then enter a comment. The next action is just a way to stop until they've entered the user input, and then when they've successfully entered the user input, we go to step 40, which is update the credit limit with what's been entered on the screen, and send an email back to the starter and change the color on the console. If it has not been successful, I want to go back to step wait so that somebody still gets a chance to approve. And then when I'm done, I'm going to complete. That workflow is completed. And the reject step is very similar. I'm prompting the user for a reason, and I'm setting the status and the color to rejected and sending an email to the starter with a different email template. Once we've configured the workflow, we need to attach it to a Sage 300 view in View Events and Scripts. So here we're going to attach this AR customer workflow to the AR0024 AR customer view. You can see we've got a new workflow tab, and we can use that in conjunction with our existing event to log changes. So we're going to attach the workflow to a field called amount credit limit. I can pick up any field of that view, and I can also use view operation like an update, an insert, or an upsert. So I'm going to choose my workflow template with the Finder, choose my entry step. Only had one in this example, and I can configure up to 4 parameters that I can then use in the workflow. So that 10,000, 50,000 were our cutoff points. The next example we're going to look at is a workflow that we can start manually from a Sage 300 screen. So I'm logged in as Natalie, configured as an ORCID user in the Information Manager tray. I'm reviewing my trial balance, and I go to the customer inquiry screen, look at what's going on with the paper hangers at 830. They have a large amount of outstandings, they have some overdue invoices. I want to put them on hold. So I'm going to start that workflow process manually. What it will do in the background is ask me to enter a comment. It will then put the customer on hold and send an email notification to the salesperson. So I can see I've received an email with the reason that I've entered. The customer has been put on hold, and the task has been assigned to Anne. On the customer inquiry screen, I've got an icon that tells me that some workflow is in progress for that customer. And I can see the history, the workflow log for this workflow in progress. Now, if I log in as Anne and look at my workflow console, I can see that I've got a customer on hold, and it's waiting for me to do something about it. Either take it off hold if when they pay their invoices, or contact them, or do whatever is the process I need to do to sort out this on hold situation. So from here, I can look at the history to see who's put it on hold, what's happened to that workflow. I'll look at the value to see the reason why it was put on hold. And I can reassign or take it off hold. So what I'm going to do is drill down to the customer screen. And from here, I can see that it's on hold, and I can take it off hold from the screen as well. So now the customer is off hold. The workflow starter should have received an email notification, and I can look at the history there to see that that customer has been put on hold and then taken off hold. And find my manual workflow. The key difference here is I've configured it to start manually. So that means that I can configure an icon on a screen to start that workflow. And then I've got 3 steps. First step is to set it on hold. Next step is I'm waiting. And the final step is taking it off hold. But you could have as many steps as required for that specific process. In this particular example, the main thing we're trying to look at is how we configure a workflow to start manually from a Sage 300 screen. The key actions there, the first thing we do is tell the workflow which Stage 300 view this applies to. So it's going to apply to the customer AR0024 view, and we can use extender view info to get that number if we're not sure about that. Then we are setting the customer variable to the customer we're looking at so that we can enable drill down on the console. This is prompting the user who's going to use that workflow to enter a reason. And then the next thing we're doing is setting the field on hold, setting that customer on hold, and sending an email to Bill Basin using that workflow template. And on the console, we're assigning that record to Anne, who's the manager of the accounts team. And finally, we're going to the step where we wait. So if I look at this wait step, it's got one thing you can go to from there. You can take it off hold and then take the customer off hold. It's got two key actions. First one is to set that customer field to the on hold field to 0, which means not ticked, off hold, and send an email back to the starter of that workflow. So to configure Information Manager to start a workflow manually, go into Information Manager Options, the Tray tab, and this is the one we were looking at. On the AR1700 customer inquiry screen, the field is called customer number, and I'm going to start. I'm going to use the workflow called customer on hold manual workflow, and I'm going to choose the set on hold as an entry step. So like with other Information Manager configuration, I can find the roto ID and the field name that I want to look at by looking at the tray and looking at the options here. I can see that it's AR1700 and the field name is customer no full stop. Then the other thing I need to do on that screen is tick that I'm an ORCID user. Any existing document management link user is automatically acting as an ORCID user in the workflow, so they can have access to the console and to any icons configured on the screens. Final scenario you're going to look at in a bit of detail is whenever I'm inserting a new order for a retail customer, so customer in the retail group, I want that order to be put on hold so that the manager can review. So I don't want it just because the customer is on hold. I want it because the customer is in the retail group. Because I want somebody to review payment terms, credit limits, delivery charges, into a PO number, post that order. So I don't want to print the order confirmation, but I can see the order has been put on hold. Reason isn't automatically pre-configured. I'm logging as Natalie, who can take these orders off hold. So if I look at my workflow console here, I'll see what's assigned to me is only the orders on hold. And I can see that I've currently got 2 orders waiting for my approval. So from here I can drill down either to the customer or customer activity or to the actual order. I can see I've got my PO number and customer number there next to the order number. I know this one is okay, so I'm going to approve it, take it off hold. From the console, it's now green, and if I drill into this order, it's been taken off hold. Let's look at that workflow template, put an order on hold. It follows a very similar structure to the one that's attached to the AR customer credit limit field. The first step is to check. When I'm checking is the customer group retail. If it is not retail, then I complete the workflow, nothing happens. And if it is retail, I do a number of things, setting the value to enable drill down, setting the description so that I can see customer and the PO number on the console. Just this a little bit. Assign the color, it's urgent, it's an order that on hold, and setting the field on hold to true, then entering a reason. That's code set in as a parameter in the workflow. So I can change it in here if I want to change the reason that is entered on those orders. Assign an approver using a parameter, and I'm recording this so that I can see the order total in my workflow history. So once I've configured that template, I'm attaching it here in View Events and Script to the OE order view. So now you see we've got a new tab called Workflow, and here I can choose to attach the workflow to any view operation, like if we go to the top, delete, insert, update, upsert, which is either update or insert, and then any fields that I want. So in this example, I'm attaching it to upsert. So whenever an order is inserted or updated, I'm going for a retail customer, I'm going to put it on hold and go through the process. Okay, so the examples we've looked at are approval of field changes, focusing on a change of an AR customer credit limit, and that's attached to an AR customer view field. We've looked at an example of a manual workflow attached to the AR customer inquiry screen that sets a customer on hold and sends an email to the salesperson. We've looked at a workflow to approve new transactions, put retail orders on hold, and wait for a manager to take the order off hold. Other examples we've touched on around GL account descriptions, IC options, purchase order transactions, and AP batches. Workflow is added to all editions of Extender. You can attach a workflow to core and third-party Sage 300 modules, attach icons to Sage 300 SDK screens. You configure your workflow templates, a series of steps and actions, which can include your own custom actions if you use Customizer or Developer Edition of Extender. Values and parameters to enable you to drill down and tailor your workflow and record those values in the history. The ability to view the workflow history. And then as an information manager ORCID user, you have access to the console to manage approval requests and tasks, as well as icons on Sage 300 screens. So to get started with the workflow, when we release it at the end of May or early June, you'll be able to download and install the latest product updates for Extender and Information Manager. It will be released for version 2017, 2018, and 2019, the currently supported versions of Sage 300. Be able to import and review sample workflow templates, such as the one we've looked at today, that will illustrate all the standard actions that are part of Extender Configurator. If you then document the business process or workflow that you're trying to automate in Sage 300, be able to map this business process to the workflow steps and actions and identify if any custom actions are required. The main benefit of using Extender Workflow versus having only a custom script is that you will have your business logic, the business logic of the process visible to users. you will benefit from the workflow infrastructure to track the history, manage the console, have all the default actions, and be able to focus the development and requirements analysis effort on the elements that are very specific to your business process. Thank you for your time, and look out for more information on the release of the workflow on the ORCID website. Thank you.